Now, even though it was accidentally released a few days ago in Spain, it's still at the top of most bestseller lists based on pre-sales. And in the past 24 hours, 3 major TV interviews have aired with more shocking claims from Harry, including the denial that he and Meghan ever accused the royal family of racism in their interview with Oprah 2 years ago.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
No, we didn't.
Well, of...
The British press said that.
Right.
Did Meghan ever mention that they were racist?
She said there were troubling comments about
There was concern about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't, not having lived within that family.
Right.
So again, going back to the difference between what my understanding is, because of my own experience, the difference between racism and unconscious bias, the two things are different. But once it's been acknowledged or pointed out to you as an individual or as an institution that you have unconscious bias, you therefore have an opportunity to learn and grow from that in order so that you are part of the solution rather than part of the problem. Otherwise, unconscious bias then moves into the category of racism.
More? OK, well, let's remind ourselves of those original bombshell claims in that interview with Oprah Winfrey.
In those months when I was pregnant, so we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh.
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
OK, well, it seems to me that there are there are lots of question marks over this. There are lots of unanswered questions. But for my money, there are 2 main ones. The first one is, did they or did they not mean to give us all the impression that the royal family is or was or has ever been racist? So they are now saying they didn't mean to give that impression, and the only people that took from their words that that was their meaning was the press, and that therefore it's all the press's fault. Now, if that's the case, and that's a big if, then surely it was their duty, they were duty-bound to correct that misapprehension that they had inadvertently made us all think that they thought the royal family was racist, because one of Prince Harry's main criticisms of the royal family and the firm and the courtiers and the press offices and all the rest of it is that they let things slip. They let impressions be given about Meghan and Harry without correcting them. And they're very, very upset that that was allowed.
Nobody ever supported them.
Exactly, Mrs. O, that nobody ever corrected those misapprehensions. So if they had inadvertently given us the wrong impression, it was up to them to make sure that they corrected that, and they didn't. So it seems to me that's one issue. And the second is, I agree with Tom Bradby, who clearly thought that was a load of old baloney, that saying somebody had said that the colour of your unborn baby's skin was an issue, and then went on to say the darker, the bigger the issue. That is racist. So I think there were 2 issues there.
And let's not forget that they actually accepted an award for fighting racism,
Just
didn't
last
they?
month they
yeah,
accepted
now
the award.
if you really...
some of the seats were $1 million for
and
one
if you
seat.
really thought you'd inadvertently caused a row that shouldn't have happened, you wouldn't reinforce that by accepting the award. So look, poor Harry, I think a lot of this traces back to the fact, unfortunately, he's just not very intelligent, and he's quite capable of saying things like, I don't think anything will be better if I remain silent. That just allows abusers to carry on abusing. And at the same time say, I don't mean my family any harm. I mean, only a fundamentally incredibly thick person could say those things.
He's like a man baby, I think. And he's so childish, but yet he's an adult. But things he says are so childish, and he's got no understanding of the real world.
But I think part of that is perhaps because we're seeing arrested development. The trauma that we keep returning to is the death of his mother when he was 12. And we're seeing somebody who clearly cannot process or hasn't processed or hasn't been able to process all of that, and then also is having a blame storm. It's everybody else's fault. So he's blamed the press for the interpretation. Well, you may have had to work within the courtiers when you were part of the royal family, but when you did that interview, you'd already walked away. So if you wanted to change that narrative, as you say, then he could have done so.
You're allowed to say whatever
You're allowed
you
to
want.
say whatever you'd want, and you had just said whatever you want. So I think this whole, I'm going to correct the British press, and I'm going to, you know, play this thing, and I'm going to come at it from a different angle, and no, it wasn't. And Tom Bradby is, you know, was doing a soft interview. He's capable of harder. He did a soft interview. He gave him every opportunity. And even he, you could see, he was shocked and horrified by what he was hearing. That, hang on a second, I can hear the brake screeching from miles away. Yeah. And I do wonder whether Harry has actually listened to any piece of advice he's been given.
Well, I think when he says having been a part of that family, I wouldn't say it was racist. Excuse me. I think what he's saying is he's making an excuse for the racism from them, because if somebody in the royal family made those comments, to me, that is racism. And when they did the interview with Oprah, Harry came out and said, he specified afterwards, it wasn't the Queen and it wasn't Prince Philip who said it. So he could have come out and corrected it. But it feels like now he's trying to backtrack. They've made a mistake. Everyone's obviously going to jump on it and pounce on it, but they have made a mistake quite clearly. And unfortunately, they can't rewrite history now. They have made everyone think that there's a racist in the family. And if the comment, as I say, is correct, then yes, someone in the royal family, to me, is racist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was a racist comment.
But funnily enough, I slightly disagree with you on that, because he then went on to talk about Susan Hussey, the Queen's lady-in-waiting, who made these apparently racist comments.
And he was
towards Ngozi Pelosi. And but he was saying that if you understand the royal family, that's unconscious bias. Now, I do think this is an interesting description, an interesting difference, because people can say things out of ignorance without being a racist person. And I think the point he was making was, forgive those people, but then educate them. And I personally agree with that.
Why didn't he intervene at the time then, if he wants to be supportive? Yes. Why did he let that narrative build and build and build? He's somebody who actually knows her. He will have had many experiences and interactions with her. So why didn't he come out at the time and say she wasn't being racist?
And that, I think, is the point.